all of us here today understand and know.
All of us. It's two of us.
No, we're talking to the people
the
too.
people.
Espo.
All right.
Everybody in here right now understands just how good Devin Booker is. But is it finally time that the national media gets their act together and starts talking the same way we do? Well, it's another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
As always, brought to you by our friends over at Desert Financial Credit Union, Arizona's #1 credit union named by Forbes. We're talking Suns, so of course, I'm tapping in with the one, the only, Espo here. And Espo, it's been the summer of Devin Booker. Coming off of a sweep in the first round, somehow his national perspective has taken a complete 180, in large part due to his performance in the Olympics, Team USA getting a gold medal, and of course, the classic legendary now quote, "I'll do it." So taking a step back, it's kind of weird how we end up here after the regular season that the Suns had.
Yeah, I think that we've always seen kind of a love affair during the Olympics. In this particular year, Suns fans were rooting for Steph and LeBron, which is, you feel dirty almost. Back with the Dream Team, you had people who would never root for Larry Bird or Magic Johnson rooting for both guys in that series. Anybody not named Isaiah Thomas, at least, was rooting for them. I mean, heck, even this year, you had Denver Nuggets fans rooting for not the USA. I mean, so weird things happen when it comes to the Olympics, right? And I feel like that's part of it. The national narrative with Devin Booker changes a little bit. But it's in part because Steve Kerr, and the players were the ones leading that charge, talking about how much Devin Booker's done. Now, that's not different, though.
Right.
Because we've heard coaches around the league always give Devin Booker respect. We have heard players like LeBron James say Devin was the most disrespected player in the league at one point. And we saw his relationship with Kobe that first year and the Be legendary. There's a reason that people joke that Devin Booker is your favorite player's favorite player, because they all respect his game and understand it. Where it becomes difficult to see if Devin Booker can win an MVP or be in that context and see if the real national narrative changes around him is the media.
Right.
And I don't know that this has done enough to necessarily change that when we get back into the season.
Well, right, and let's dive into that, right? Because there are always players in every league that it feels like the actual athletes and the coaches themselves, they respect more than the national media, and for whatever reason. And, when it comes to Devin Booker, I think there's a couple of things that come into play as to why the media is not all about him and hyping him up in the way that maybe they are hyping up in Anthony Edwards, and we'll get into comparing those two in a second. Number one is, of course, the Phoenix aspect of all of it. Anybody who is a fan of a sport here or a team or anything understands that there's kind of like this underlying, again, bias, welcome to Southwest Bias, against athletes from this market, even though I wouldn't even consider it a small market. It's not numerically a small market at all. But I think another part of it is just the fact that a lot of people made their opinions about Devin Booker year one, right when he was drafted, or year two, or based their opinion based off of how bad the Suns were in his first developmental years. And people don't like to admit when they're wrong, especially media don't like to admit when they're wrong. And that is something where you look at it now, it's incredible to see. Like, I get that the Olympics and everything, it's people rooting for everybody, but he wasn't getting this type of love after 2021. And arguably what he did out of 2021 was just as impressive, coming off of a finals appearance, a devastating finals loss, getting on a plane to Tokyo and immediately playing the same role. And a, quite frankly, less talented team, because you're missing the likes of a Steph Curry there. So coming off of this year, seeing him play out there with your Steph, your LeBrons, your KDs, well, yes, the coaches and the players will always love Book and they'll always hype him up. You had literal media pundits going, wow, I was so wrong about Devin Booker. Wow, I didn't understand how important his impact was to winning. And that can't help but make me think, when it actually comes time to vote for MVP this year and the media are putting down their ballots, how much might that actually change their opinion? Because it feels like they already made up their mind about Book before. It didn't matter how well he played. Now, if he plays better than he did last season, which numerically was incredible, and he actually has the national media behind him, I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be the absolute best year for him to at least be in that conversation, bar none in his career.
Couple things. This year's Olympics was more watched because you had Steph and and LeBron and the bigger names. So I think that's part of why you saw more of a shift, more attention on it, right? You bring up, can this market win MVPs as their bias? I don't think that's fair. I mean, Barkley obviously did it. Nash did it 2 times. I don't think it's the market. I think Devin Booker was saddled with, at that beginning of his career, a good shooter on a bad team, a volume scorer, these things that came early on. I think the 70-point game and how he got there, and I've said this a million times, is a stigma that he hasn't really been able to get rid of. And it's not his fault in any way. It wasn't as if he was doing anything egregious in that game. It was more his coach that was doing all sorts of things to try to make sure he got to that 70. But I feel like that stuck with him from a national perspective and a little bit with other fans as well. It's a maturation process for him because we've seen each year he adds a little something to his game. But I also think it takes a long time for people to be willing to admit they're wrong to the point where it's almost impossible not to. And I feel like the Olympics may have been that inflection point where, oh crap, everybody's seeing this, everybody's watching this, and players and coaches are saying this guy is the key because what he did. Plus, he became immensely likable with what he was doing on social, the way he was hiding shoes. He was relatable, the camcorder at other events. Those were the things that I think softened some of the belief against him and made it really difficult not to admit you were wrong in the past with that. I think only the people with the most entrenched opinion on that, for probably the most wrong reasons, are holding on to it. But the key this year is they have to surprise. They have to win more than people expect, because right now there's not a lot of expectation. People have written off this team. It's the polar opposite of what it was last year. You're not reading articles that the 8 teams that could win an NBA title and the Suns don't even make the list, where last year they were a darling to be included in all that because look at all this star power. If they come out of the gates and they surprise early, I think that this narrative galvanizes and puts them in a position where if the stats are where they were like last year and they're towards the top of the West, you have maybe a perfect storm to get him in that conversation.
Yeah, I think that he will be in the conversation this year. Obviously, it all depends and hinges on Phoenix's success. And there are a couple different aspects within that success that we have to break down in order for Devin Booker to receive the lion's share of credit for that. And we'll get there. But when you look at the one season where he's actually ended up on the MVP ballot when he came in 4th, and that was 2021-2022, his numbers statistically across the board better this past season in his age 27 season than back then when he was 4th in MVP. Now, of course,
but where were they that
season? Exactly. The difference is the record that goes behind it, the team success that goes behind it. But I think what's fascinating about this Olympics performance from Book was that the entire narrative shifted, of course, yes, because of his personality, and he was out there hanging out with Snoop Dogg and watching skateboarding and going to gymnastics and cheering on Team USA, and he drops a 14-minute vlog with all this behind-the-scenes footage where you see him actually interact with these players, and he shows a side of himself that he had never shown before. But what's fascinating to me is that when it comes to the pure basketball perspective, Devin Booker was not the numero uno alpha on that team, scoring 20 points per game, absolutely fully being that lead guy where when people watch basketball, that's usually who they give credit with. But in the unique situation in Team USA where you have 3 of the greatest of all time in LeBron and KD and in Steph, you have another MVP in Joel Embiid, and on the court sharing with them at that moment is also Devin Booker, and you look at him and you say, holy crap, he is actually the main cog that's making all of this work. It's greatness all around him, but we saw other people, i.e. Jason Tatum, I'm sorry, Celtics fans, slide into that role and not have that same impact. And Jason Tatum almost universally is beloved more than Book in NBA circles.
Anymore.
And right. And again, it's fascinating to see somebody change so many opinions in a more nuanced way and not play just absolute dominant basketball, right? And so when now they can see him go in and they earned this sort of respect for Book being a role player of sorts on a team, but still being one of their best players on what some are calling the most talented basketball team ever assembled, including the Dream Teams. Now when he goes into an NBA season this year, and if he ups his averages and points like he has basically been doing consistently throughout his career, you're looking at 27.5, 28, 29 points per game, playing more off ball, still being like efficient in all means necessary and being an absolute killer. Going in with that, those narratives that you mentioned being built at the beginning of his career, those are washed away because of what he did this summer, even though they should have been washed away earlier. But it's not about should, it's about how it is actually laid out so far.
Well, I think part of it is, the sacrifice for your country mentality, right?
Yeah.
He didn't have to be the star. He didn't have to score. He sacrificed what he's been in the NBA game for the betterment of this team, for the pride of his country and playing for the 3 letters on the front of it rather than the letters on the back of it. I think that resonated with people and why it got attention. But I'm concerned. You bring up scoring. Yeah, maybe he increases that a little bit. But I think where he's going to get knocked is I think those assist numbers go down because he's not going to have to be the primary ball handler. So it's something that people can point at and go, well, he was worse this year than he was last year. The other part is he has to continue to put in the effort on defense.
Yes.
Not that he doesn't put forth effort, but the perceived effort that you saw in the Olympics, so people can say, oh, Devin Booker was locked in defensively, right? And you bring up the 21-22 season and you brought up the finals run. He split the vote from the Phoenix, from people that wanted to give Phoenix credit.
Yeah.
Chris Paul, him. Do you get in that situation with KD and him that becomes problematic as well if you get to that point?
And that's what I want to talk about. But first, I want to remind people that this episode of Southwest Bias is brought to you by Desert Financial Credit Union. Listen, I say it all the time. It's almost becoming a running joke now. Desert Financial has been in my family 4 generations, literally my grandparents to my parents to me.
Years.
I wouldn't be surprised if like 95% of that 84 years, a Ruby family member was a part of Desert Financial back when they used to be Desert Schools. However, they're still here today and thriving. They are here to help you. They have financial experts who are committed to the community and helping you find financial solutions, whether that's your basics, your checkings, and your savings accounts, but also mortgages, loans, credit card options, investments, and everything like that. Plus, Espo, there's not many places that are just going to give you money, and especially the places where you give them your money to hold. Desert Financial has bucked that trend. When you open a free checking account online, you get $200 in bonuses, and you can get started today by visiting desertfinancial.com/200. Let's talk about the Kevin Durant part of it, because there is absolutely unequivocally zero chance that Devin Booker wins MVP this year unless he is fully considered the best player on the Phoenix Suns. And in order to be the best player on the Phoenix Suns, you have to be better than what some people argue is a top 10 player of all time. Some people have him on the Mount Rushmore. Some people call him the most skilled. And even though he's in the latter stage of his career, as you saw in the Olympics, as you saw last season with his averages, Kevin Durant was second team All-NBA. Book was third team All-NBA. Kevin Durant is still playing defense on a high level. Devin Booker last season wasn't his best defensive season, especially coming off of playoffs where he was putting up Michael Jordan numbers on both ends. So it's not that we're expecting a fall off from Kevin Durant, because I'm not. But in order for Devin Booker to clearly be the guy when it comes to the Phoenix Suns and MVP voters, Espo, there has to be no discussion that Devin Booker was the main engine that powered this team. I do think he's able to do that, but that is a very tall task.
Thus is the flaw in all of this, because the Phoenix Suns won't succeed at the level that they need to without Devin Booker and Kevin Durant playing at that level, right? And the new additions helping fill in those gaps that they had last year. This team, to reach the success that they want and the success to put either guy in an MVP conversation, needs both superstars playing at that level. So this is why I don't think either of them are going to crack a top 3, even if the Suns go on to have one of their more dominant seasons and live up to the potential that everybody thought last year. These two guys will do exactly what Chris Paul and Devin Booker did, split a vote. And it's the only way it's going to happen. I don't think they can be successful if either one of these guys isn't playing to those stats.
Well, and listen, at the end of the day, if you go to Devin Booker and you go to Kevin Durant and you say, what would you rather have? You put up immensely enormous stats, but the team isn't as good, or both of you are playing an extremely high level and the team's way better, they're taking the two players play at their best and they go on with it. There's no question with that. I do think, though, that when we talk about integrating Bradley Beal, having multiple point guards who are there to set people up, I do think Book is going to be put in more of a position to, I think establish his dominance is a little bit too harsh of a phrasing when it comes to playing with one of the greatest of all time, like in Kevin Durant. But I think he's going to be put in a position to reassert himself as the guy here. And not necessarily that on a game-to-game, on a play-to-play, like a dribble-to-dribble basis, that might change where, hey, Kevin Durant's going to be that guy now. Devin Booker's going to be that guy now. But what do we talk about KD in the Olympics? He's completely generous to the next generation of players. It's why he's in Phoenix right now. It's why he loves Devin Booker. He wants Devin Booker to succeed. He wants Devin Booker to get the love. But B, Kevin Durant is one of the very few high-volume scorers in NBA history that doesn't step on the game. He doesn't get in the way. He doesn't stop other people from getting theirs. I think there's a reality where both of them can put up incredible numbers. Book has better numbers, and the Suns go from a team that was bounced in the first round, swept in embarrassing fashion, to winning close to 60 games this year if these two, plus Bradley Beal, plus everybody around them, which is the next part we're going to get into, everything fits in on that puzzle, including, hey, we now have a higher opinion of Book. There might be a case to where that splitting of votes isn't as massive because it might just be Devin Booker's time. He's entering his 10th season in the NBA. He's entering the years that you would consider the prime of most NBA players. I don't think it would be shocking if at the end of this season, we look back and we say, this was the year that Book really made his mark.
I am going to go on record as saying this. There is a higher percentage chance that the Phoenix Suns win the NBA Finals and hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy than one of the Phoenix Suns hoisting the MVP trophy this year.
I don't necessarily disagree with that.
And I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily either. I don't think Book cares if this is viewed as his team or KD's team. I think Book cares about, is he helping get the best out of every single guy on this roster? Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to be the key to this team's success is that bench better? Are the guys in the starting lineup better? Does Tyus Jones fill what everybody felt was this massive needed point guard with Monte Morris filling it when he's not on the floor? Like, these are the things that will determine the Suns' success. And I don't think anything that's going to happen is going to be enough to get one of these two guys in the MVP discussion.
I think you're right in the fact that it's more likely that this team wins a championship than any individual wins MVP. Now, of course, there are unfortunate things you don't want to think about where it's what about injuries? What about, adversity this team hits and being able to come through on the other side of it, and maybe Devin Booker gaining that type of respect, or quite frankly, even Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is just as much in the conversation to win an MVP this year as Devin Booker. Now, what would be great? So we got both, right? We got Devin Booker MVP. We got a Kevin Durant Finals MVP.
I'm not greedy.
And we go with it there. Listen, I'm just saying it would be nice. Obviously not something that we're expecting. But when it comes to the bench surrounding it and even a new coach and just a better team around them, I think that is the last thing that we can focus on as, listen, maybe we're not thinking it's likely and we're not going to put our money on it. But if we're living in a situation where somehow, some way, Devin Booker wins MVP, you're right. It's going to be because his assist numbers don't drop, but his scoring goes up. It's going to be because he becomes more efficient. It's going to be because he plays better defense. And the only ways that Devin Booker is able to do that is if all the pieces around him fit better than they did last season. And by all accounts, everything that you guys have been saying on the PHNX Suns show at 3 p.m. every single day is that this team is massively in a better position to do that and to get the best out of their star players than they were last year. And that is the last thing that I think in this hypothetical reality, even if we think it's a long shot, of one of these guys, but specifically what we're talking about right now in Devin Booker winning MVP, it's because every single signing hits, these rookies hit, and the guys who are returning are better than they were last year. Mm-hmm. And if all of that happens, there's no reason to believe that Devin Booker's stats on every front, offense, defense, efficiency, gets better.
I don't know. I could see a world where the bench is so good and they have so many later leads in a fourth quarter where maybe the scoring isn't as high just because it's not needed. And look, this bench is probably the deepest we've seen on a Devin Booker Suns team. And yes, there's ifs. We saw last year where basically every signing was a failure in terms of it, but you've got more proven quantities this year. I look at it, I still think there's more likelihood that you wind up with the sixth man of the year on this roster than the MVP. And quite frankly, Luka, Joel, and Jokic, you throw Giannis in there too. You can all have your MVP if you want and enjoy a second round exit. We'll take the finals trophy. I think that's got to be the mindset in this. And I don't know. I just, the path for Devin Booker to get there and be MVP, I can't see as much as I can see the path for this team clicking and finding the finals.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I think simultaneously living at the same time as that is the fact that if he is going to be in the position to win it, this is going to be the best spot that he's going to be put in. National media wise, team wise. And that's the argument where you already have somebody who's been top 4 in MVP. You have somebody who, maybe to some publications is not the best shooting guard in the league, which maybe is a different Southwest bias in its own right. But you have somebody
I think that's all hype. Who's hype?
Yeah. I think that's like, if you're looking at it as a trade, you take the championship. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, the team. Everybody would agree with that. Devin Booker's not going to go out and hunt for an MVP. He's not going to stat pad. He's going to do what he does, which is always make the team better. However, he is now in a position to where helping that team and putting that team in a position of success might actually become the most fruitful for him as far as national media respect and even fan respect as well. And maybe you see that as far as all-star voting. Maybe you see that as far as you just don't get the stupid hate that he's undergone for whatever reason in his career so far that we've talked about. At the end of the day, this might not be the year he wins MVP. He might not ever win MVP. He might not give a crap. But at the end of the day, I think that this is the situation so far in his 10 years that he's been in the league, most likely to see him in that situation, even if there are other more likely scenarios to happen.
Look, I feel like this summer was the Cinderella moment for Book, right? He got all the attention at the ball in France, right? Left a lot of shoes all over the place. But in the end, I think it goes back in some ways when the season starts. I don't think the national media completely adjusts their narrative because people fall back into old habits. It's not Team USA anymore. It's the Phoenix Suns that they're looking at. And, I think this will be, the yearbook, and it'll carry through from him playing wise. I don't know that the love affair is going to. But in the end, as long as, as he winds up with the attention in June, because he's accomplished it, doesn't matter, right?
Well, we're on the same page with that. Larry O'Brien, maybe a finals MVP, more attainable than an MVP this year. But what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below. Make sure that if you made it to the end of this video, you are subscribed to PHNX Sports. We are marching to 35K. We appreciate everybody that got us to 30K. Make sure you leave a like on this video as well. Of course, you can check out Espo on PHNX Suns Show live at 3 p.m. all throughout the offseason, Monday through Friday. And then, of course, when this NBA season does come around, it's going to be pre- and post-game shows for all 82 plus some in-season tournament as well, so possibly 83 and playoffs going through that. So you're going to make sure
preseason in there.
Yeah,
too.
You're going to want to make sure to be tapped in on that. And of course, you can follow the Sun Show on social at PHNX_Suns. You can follow Espo at Espo. You can find me Monday through Friday at 1:30 on our Sun Devils show at PHNX_Sun Devils, also found just on this channel. And you can follow me at ERIKRUBY. That's Erik Ruby on Twitter. We'll be back next week. Let us know if we're stupid. Let us know if we're smart or somewhere in between down in the comments. It has been another edition of Southwest Bias.
You're stupid.
I'm keeping that in.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.